Hi everyone, my name is Ashmita and I'm here as part of the P.A.R.C program. We're here today with Birunthaa from the P.A.A.R Addiction Assessment and Referral Center. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to have the opportunity to chat with you. I'd love to know a little bit more about yourself and the work that you do.
For sure, and before I start, I want to say thank you for giving me this opportunity to interact with you. So as you mentioned, my name's Birunthaa. I'm from P.A.A.R Addiction Assessment and Referral Center, also known as P.A.R.C. That's our short acronym. So I am an addictions counselor, and I do work with clients who have substance and drug use concerns, and currently working in a program that provides intensive treatment for them, so looking at concurrent disorders as well.
Thank you for your response. I'd love to know more about what the difference might be between a habit and an addiction and how you kind of make that distinction.
Of course. So a habit is what we would consider a behavior that is unconscious to us that maybe has a neutral effect, versus an addiction is a behavior that is unconscious that actually may be fulfilling or satisfying one of our basic needs. And so because of that, our brain is able to comprehend, and so it may lead to forming a dependence on this behavior that leads to the development of that addiction because we are trying to fulfill one of our basic needs.
Okay, that's a really good distinction to kind of have in mind. I wanted to ask you about harm reduction, what that means, what that might look like, and how that's a part of the work that you do.
So harm reduction is a method that allows an individual to determine the path that they would like to reduce their substance. Because really, at its simplest level, it's all about reducing the risk of harm to ourselves. So for example, putting on a seatbelt. That's a behavior that we engage in so that we reduce the risk of getting injured. So two main principles that come out of this are safety and security. So harm reduction really emphasizes how can one be safe in their use and how can one be secure. So whether it's using nicotine patches instead of smoking or having safe injection sites, these are forms of harm reduction that can allow someone to reduce their use in a safe manner. And it also entails looking at the body. So how can our body also be safe and secure in terms of managing withdrawals or maybe lessening the intensity? So harm reduction is a way where by reducing someone's use, they're able to help manage their withdrawals, reduce the intensity severity so that their body's not going through a shock. Because it can be a heavy shock to the system when it's complete abstinence, and so adapting to that change and reducing the risk of any harm through that change.
I wanted to know more about some of the signs of addiction and how we can know if somebody might need some extra support.
For sure. So there can be a lot of different signs, but I think some of the ones that might be a little bit more prominent or stand out is if someone is spending a lot of time purchasing or consuming substances or drugs, or if they spend time in their day thinking that they can't go on without using. So that would kind of indicate any cravings or any compulsions to use. We can also consider any isolating behaviors. So maybe spending time by themselves or finding secret spots within a home environment or social environment to use. So those can be some signs. Again, I think one of the major signs or factors may be being in denial. So not realizing or seeing that some of the negative consequences of their behaviors or actions are just starting to play out a little bit. So these are what I would say are some of the signs that might kind of be propelling someone to think they may be experiencing addiction or maybe a loved one is going through it.
I'd love to know more about some of the factors that might place somebody at higher risk of experiencing addiction than somebody else.
So again, to that question, I think there can be a lot of different factors at play because it is a very individualized journey when it comes to how one can develop an addiction and what it's being developed because of. Going back to some of those needs that I was talking about earlier. But some commonly seen reasons or factors may be any pre-existing mental health concerns, whether it be depression or anxiety, schizophrenia. Also looking into a component of genetics, so a family history of anything, even trauma, attachment concerns, so how one has been raised in their early childhood and relationships, low self-esteem, low self-worth, and I believe also invalidating social environments. So receiving messages that they don't have a sense of belonging or that they don't fit can also fuel perhaps the development of an addiction.
I'm curious to hear about some common misconceptions and myths around addiction, because I know we hear a lot of stories and there's a lot of media around, this is what an addict looks like, or these are those behaviors. So what are some of those misconceptions and myths?
So I would say, just to start off, there's no particular description of what an addict looks like. I think it just kind of comes to the understanding that anyone and everyone may experience, whether it's an addiction, substance use concern, or even a mental health concern. So I think just breaking that first misconception is one big thing. Another is that using substances or drugs is a choice that someone makes. So that's a big misconception, as there may be a little bit more of a push there than one may realize. And so it's not really a choice and it's not their fault entirely, but maybe something that they can't control. And this kind of speaks to dopamine, one of the neurotransmitters in the brain that's associated with our reward and pleasure system. So substances and drugs tend to actually enhance the levels of dopamine within the brain. So what the brain would normally produce, it can be a lot lower than what using substances can provide. And so kind of that reward and pleasure feeling, that's something people don't want to let go of. And I'm sure it's something we all want to have a lot of. So when we kind of get that kick in and, we feel that, we're thinking, oh, you know what, I think this is good. This is something I might like to have. And so we tend to start going back to it because we know it's reinforced something good for us. And so because of that, it may alleviate or take away that choice option, but now it's something we're seeking without realizing that we're seeking it. So that's often a big misconception that I see in here as well, that a lot of people may not fully grasp, that there's more to it than just simply someone saying, I want to drink today or I want to use today. And again, hitting the first point of almost anyone or everyone can experience it, I think that also highlights that if we're trying to fulfill one of our basic needs, we can get into survival mode a bit. And so to survive, we might go to any extent to ensure that we're getting our needs met and that we're able to protect ourselves. So it can vary and depend on who develops an addiction or how severe it can become for them.
You kind of touched on this earlier, but I'd like to know a little bit more about that link between trauma and addiction and how trauma might kind of shape the way somebody might get into addiction.
So when it comes to trauma, individuals may tend to recall such events through flashbacks or nightmares. And depending on the traumatic event itself, I think a general theme is that one may tend to want to forget that it happened, want to wish it never happened. And so in a way of trying to forget that, one may tend to go into a suppression mode. So suppressing the event and trying to push it down and not have it kind of surge up and live through it again, because it can bring back so many painful feelings and emotions that maybe one is not willing to kind of play out or experience them in the moment. And so when it comes to substance use or drug use, what can happen is that can help with that forgetting or suppressing. So it can at times numb out some of those emotions that people feel so that they're not able to recall it in the moment. And so that may be that link of, again, survival mode instinct of, this is going to help me forget this, or this is going to help me suppress this. And so I want to protect myself in the moment, and I'm going to kind of start engaging in that. And that unconscious dependence starts to form there.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, how, this can help you kind of push that really difficult experience down to get through the rest of your day. So thank you for that. How do you believe that counseling or support groups or, other treatment programs might support somebody who's experiencing addiction?
So when it comes to counseling, I believe it provides a safe space for someone to open up and, again, place themselves in a vulnerable position to share, because it does come down to sharing your story with a stranger at the end of the day. And so building that therapeutic relationship can also give one space to develop accountability. Someone that's checking in with me, someone that I can talk to, someone that I can open up to. And that also leads to understanding that there may not be a lot of bias at place, right? Someone who's a stranger may not know who we are, may not know the details of our lives, may not have any other opinions. And so it's a very non-judgmental, safe space for them. And so through that, developing that therapeutic relationship, again, one may be able to explore deeper into their thoughts or their feelings. How do they cope with life? How do they handle certain situations? And when it comes to support groups, I think the big factor is that it brings a sense of connection and community, right? Being able to address and see that there are other people who have experienced some of our experiences, who have gone through, who have been there in our shoes, right? And so that can also provide a sense of belonging and a sense of connection that, I get you, you get me, we kind of know how things work. And so that can also get someone to feel more comfortable. So counseling and support groups in this sense can help someone through their recovery journey.
That's really wonderful. Like, I really love that idea of connecting to somebody else to be able to be vulnerable and work through those experiences and, feel like you're not alone in what you're dealing with. That can be so helpful. In the same kind of vein, how can friends or family of somebody who's experiencing addiction kind of support them or kind of work through that experience, because that is also quite a difficult place to be in?
So I think it first can help for family members, friends, loved ones to understand what is an addiction, how does it develop, what may be some of the factors contributing to that as well. Leading back to that misconception of it's a choice, it was their decision to use. Maybe understanding what all of those factors are first can be a big first move. And again, when providing support, I think also understanding the boundary between this is, a suggestion that I provide for you versus this is the decision that you have to go through with, right? So not trying to be overbearing and controlling in that sense. So not working for them or against them almost, but working with them. So kind of, side by side, what step are you taking? How can I help you in that regard? So wanting to kind of match them in that sense and not overbearingly taking control, that can also be a good way of showing support. And again, from the perspective of a family member and friend, it can be difficult to see someone going through an addiction and wanting to help them as much as we can, but realizing that maybe some things are not in our control, right? And that can be a big step to alleviate some pressure from family members that at the end of the day, yes, they will make their own decision, but you may have been able to play your part in telling them what they're able to do and what they're not able to do. And lastly, I would say through all of this, for family members to find their own way of gaining support. Because it can be a lot to have to navigate through so many different avenues. So really trying to enhance their own self-care, whether it be through their own support groups or counseling or other outlets, just knowing that to help someone else, we have to help ourselves first. It's what they tell us in airplanes. When you put on your oxygen mask, you do it for yourself and then the person beside you. So to really support and help someone else, I think understanding what they're going through and also supporting ourselves so that we can provide for someone else.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That's so helpful and I think such a thoughtful way of approaching something that can be really, really difficult. I want to thank you again for your time and all of your thoughts and sharing all of your experiences. This has been really wonderful to be able to sit down and chat with you about this. So thank you for coming in and being a part of this.
Oh, well, thank you for giving me the time and opportunity to speak about this and letting me have a conversation with you. Yes, thank you again.